Let justice roll down like water, righteousness like a mighty stream. For our grandsons and granddaughters, remember to remember the dream. Welcome to Songs and Stories from Home, as we continue to remember the dream. This week, Selma. On Sunday, the 26th of July in 2020, Representative John Lewis crossed the Edmund Pettis Bridge in Selma, Alabama one last time. His flag-draped casket pulled by a pair of horses rolling atop a carpet of rose petals, his family following on foot for this, his final crossing. 55 years earlier, on the first Sunday in March, a 25-year-old John Lewis led a line of protesters across that bridge, hoping to walk the 54 miles to the steps of the state capitol in Montgomery and make the case to the governor that the right to vote should belong to everyone. They didn't make it to the county line on the other side of the bridge before being attacked by state troopers, many of them on horseback, deploying tear gas and batons. John Lewis, gassed and beaten, said he thought he saw death that morning. The scenes of the carnage were so horrific and the right to vote viewed as so universally American that 8 days later, the President of the United States addressed a joint session of Congress saying it was time for all Americans to be given the right to vote. The Congress agreed. And 5 months later, universal voting became the law of the land. Ever since that monumental moment, certain groups have never stopped doing everything they can think of to limit that right. And now there are new protests in the street, this time protesting the criminal justice system and systemic racism that's never been finally and fully addressed by this country. What is different in this summer of 2020 is that now it's the President of the United States who's doing what he can to limit voting and who is condoning the use of tear gas and the use of paramilitary forces against the protesters. John Lewis believed in America. He spent a lifetime working toward a better America. He believed in nonviolent civil disobedience, what he called good trouble. He also believed the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. He believed in the beloved community. His faith continues to inspire me and gives me hope that as a country we may somehow cross that bridge together and make true our promise and our pledge of liberty and justice for all. Let justice roll down like water, righteousness like a mighty stream. For our grandsons and granddaughters, remember to remember the dream. The climactic moment of the pilgrimage came when we walked across the Edmund Pettis Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Walking in the footsteps of those who walked across that bridge in what was known as Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965. And in the process, they turned a bridge on U.S. Route 80 across the Alabama River, named after a former Confederate general and Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, into a National Historic Landmark. Few symbols illustrate the peril and the promise of this nation better than that bridge, or animate the heart and soul of this country more clearly and courageously than the people who walked across it that Sunday. President Lyndon Johnson knew at the time. He knew it when in a speech to the joint session of Congress 8 days later, he said, "At times, history and fate meet in a single moment, in a single place to shape a turning point in our unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord, and so it was a century ago at Appomattox, and so it is now in Selma, Alabama. These days, maybe more than ever, we need to know and remember the importance of Selma and that bridge. It's historic, in part because the federal government said it was, and helped make it so with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. It's consequential because the images and the words of the free press showed the world it was. Significant because it illuminated the alliance between such people as Dr. King and the President of the United States. And of course memorable because of the faith and the fortitude of the 600 on the bridge on Bloody Sunday, the 2,500 on the bridge 2 days later on Turnaround Tuesday, the 8,000 who walked across the bridge on the way to Montgomery on March 21st, and the 25,000 who gathered 5 days later to hear Dr. King speak at the steps of the Alabama State Capitol. In the end, what we seek, he said, is a society at peace with itself. A society that can live with its conscience. I know you're asking today, how long will it take? I come to say this afternoon, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long. Not long. Today we are far from being a society at peace with itself. We continue to struggle to be a society comfortable with living with its conscience. The right to vote and the right for all votes to count remains under constant attack. We should also remember the day after Bloody Sunday, President Johnson sent the first American combat troops to Vietnam. And when he did, they took the dreams of his great society with them. And yet I choose to believe President Johnson's final words from that speech to Congress still echo down the hallway of history and mean something today. It is all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry, our legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome. A sentiment President Obama echoed when he spoke at the foot of the bridge commemorating the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And those from our pilgrimage looking on, we honor those who walked so we could run. We must run so our children soar. And we will not grow weary, for we believe in the power of an awesome God. And we believe in this country's sacred promise. May He bless those warriors no longer with us. And I will add, the countless others who came before them and those who followed after in fact and in spirit. So many others over so many years who inspire us today, because when it came to them, when they came to it, whatever it was, they crossed the bridge. I want to add that in 1963, at 23, Bernard Lafayette felt he was old enough to lead a campaign that led up to this 2 years later. And he saw Selma on a map at SNCC headquarters with an X on it. And he was told no one wanted to go there. The whites were too mean. The blacks too scared. Bernard said, that's just where I want to go. And we line up 2 by 2. We begin to walk in silence. Is it ours or others' footsteps that we hear? We are not joining in the chorus of all those who've come before us and all those who one day will appear. We cross that bridge and form a circle on the other side. Arm in arm sing, we shall overcome and realize Celebrate, commemorate, and most of all we're consecrating those who crossed the bridge before and all they sacrificed. 'Cause once we cross that bridge, old friend, we can't go back to where we've been, though we return from where we came. Nothing is the same.